I think in the conscience of time, Marcus, I think we'll start now, and I'll thanks very much for those that have taken the time to join. As we've said, my name is Gary Fielding. I am a solution specialist at Ultima. I'm glad to be hosting this webinar around hybrid cloud. Very keen to explore the area, as I think it's definitely one of great interest, and glad to be joined by a very esteemed colleague who will happily contribute for this. Enough of seeing myself. I think I'll kindly kick into our presentation view. So in relation to hybrid cloud, we wanted to address this space as we think it's critical. As you can see from the slides, 82% of organizations have adopted a hybrid cloud strategy or will do within the next 12 months. This is being shared across all of IDC, Forrester and Gartner. The 72% of organizations is taking a hybrid approach, combining the use of public and private clouds. We will address why that is of consequence and why customers are doing this. It covers a number of different key metrics. But the key one for me is the bottom left, which is the actual hybrid cloud market globally. Compound annual growth rate puts it at over 20% during the next 10 years. In essentially the global market for hybrid cloud is estimated at 106 billion this year, and is estimated to grow to just shy of 300 billion within the next 4 or 5 years. As you can appreciate, that is a significant growth, and it's an area that also impacts other market shifting technologies such as AI and data modernization. We think hybrid cloud is definitely the key to do so. In relation to there are a number of different factors that we see why this is hybrid cloud is the way forward. It's simply that private or public cloud alone isn't enough for businesses to get the scalability, resiliency, reduce the complexity, reduce the data silos to make compliance and regulation manageable and attainable. But I think the key one for me is the bottom left, which is the predictable cost model that everybody is looking to have. There is a number of different areas that this could be covered off, and I'm glad to say that Ultima, obviously you're on our webinar, you're aware of who Ultima are. Ultima are a vastly experienced VAR managed services, professional services and IT consultancy. Ultima work around 3 key pillars: cloud, security and digital workspace. Obviously, I can see that hybrid cloud sits across both cloud and security. We'll explain more as we go through the questions. As you can see on the far right-hand side, almost all companies are migrating apps to the cloud in varying degrees, with more and more, I think 50% is a conservative estimate, finding it very, very difficult. This is impacting them from a projects, from a deadlines missed, from incurring additional unforeseen costs. It's critical that it's an area that we allow our customers to grow and to reap the benefits of the cloud model to themselves. With that in mind, obviously Ultima has recently been awarded places on every single lot of the Crown Commercial Service TPAS 2 framework. This is the key framework vehicle for all public sector organisations moving forward, taking over from TPAS, which will be retired at the end of this calendar year. It's a massive opportunity for ourselves, and obviously there are a very limited number of companies that are on all 7 lots. So we see it as a mechanism to assist our public sector customers massively and to obviously grow in the space. In relation to allowing us to investigate why hybrid cloud, I would like to introduce Marcus Bonner. Marcus Bonner is a Chief Technologist for Hybrid Cloud from HPE, which essentially is GreenLake. Very welcomed to introduce him, and thanks very much indeed for taking the time out to speak to us, Marcus. What I'd like to do is, over to you, Marcus. Apologies, I'd like to give you a chance to introduce yourself.
No, not at all, Gary. You've done just fine. So thank you for inviting me on this. It's a real pleasure to be here, and look forward to talking with you about hybrid cloud and its relevance to customers.
Thank you very much indeed. So I think one of the sort of areas that I wanted to cover off first with yourself is sort of insights from real world customers that we can share with the audience. Well, the obvious question for me a little bit is why is hybrid cloud of value to customers?
So I'm going to take that and just break it apart if that's okay. So historically, we've had data centers because we've had to put data into a center. And whether that's one's own data center or a service provider or in the public cloud and so on, that has been the constraint. Whereas now what we're seeing are architectures, both public and private, that allow people to start doing what they want to do, where they want to do it. You know, I'm at the edge, I want to do things here, or I'm at the core and I want to see what's happening at the various edges and compare them, or I want to do this here and so on. And so what we're seeing are architectures following, finally, I think many customers would say, the customers need to be able to do what they want to do, where they want to do it. That makes sense.
Completely. And I think that affects literally a number of different areas of the business. So I think it's then probably the lead on for me is sort of which business functions does that mean it allows you to prioritize, or is there certain areas that you think hybrid cloud would impact before others?
Yeah, I think that when you start to work with hybrid cloud, and let's pick a really obvious topic, okay? Let's pick AI. Say you're starting off in AI and you're thinking, well, I don't really know what I want to do here. I want to explore the art of the possible. And that naturally lends oneself to saying, well, what have the hyperscalers got? You know, AWS, Azure, GCP. What have they got in terms of tooling, in terms of capability and so on? So I can put my toe in the water and I can build and I can develop there. But for many organizations, well, that's fine. There are other things that they want to do for a variety of reasons. Could be around data, could be around size of processing required and so on. They say, actually, now I've reached this level of maturity, I want to be able to do a lot of that on premises, but I don't want to give up what I've done. So I want to be able to become more agnostic about this and grow things where I want to grow them. I think you're seeing a lot of business applications, obviously a SaaS, who doesn't use things like Salesforce and Workday, et cetera. And that allows us to start determining, where do I want to build things like my customer mobile apps? Do I want to build those in the cloud and deploy them out on the edge like that? Do I want to build them in the core and put them out in a different way and so on? How is my business constructed? And therefore, how does my hybrid cloud architecture, how can that reflect my business construct rather than the other way around?
100%. I think you preempted me with the next question, which was which key applications were going to benefit best from hybrid cloud. So we've already covered that off. I think that's a very nice flow for it. I think, can HPE suggest how customers can unlock the power of the hybrid cloud solution?
Yeah, absolutely. And it starts, funnily enough, from a technology vendor, not with technology, but with process and people. The other two legs of the technology stool, and that is taking an evaluation, working with ourselves and our partners like Ultima and so on, of saying, let's look at the estate and let's take a view of what would be most efficient and where would it be. So what needs to move to the public cloud, what might need to move back, what needs to have a foot in both camps, what needs to be fully on premises, etc. And then taking that evaluation and saying, right, based upon this is how the business will operate most effectively. So we should place our capabilities in these different locations. From that, technology choices then derive, which are appropriate to that market sector and to that business within that market sector.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So in light of that, then what do you see the toughest challenges for customers to adopt hybrid cloud?
So I think the first one is that we've tended to, people have tended to take positions. The cloud is the answer. It's got the stuff, and almost, and therefore I'm bound to it. And I think that we all need to be much more agnostic about such things. It isn't that there is an answer, but an appropriate answer for a particular workload or use case at a particular point in time that may, in the fullness of time, alter, okay, and be different. And that actually it's about fluidity rather than saying, I'm taking a technology approach to this. It's saying I'm taking a business and a business outcomes approach to this, and therefore what derives from that.
Agreed. I think there's some maturity, and obviously the change in, politely put, some of the challenges for the IT teams in our customers is evolving. It's far more engaged around the business outcomes as opposed to sort of more of a functional or more of a traditional engagement. So I'm
absolutely okay. Yeah.
I agree, and I think the guys would actually really appreciate it that some of that work is being taken away from them with some of the technology done in the right way.
Yes, indeed. Taking off that sort of low-level things that public and private clouds can do, removing that and allowing people to get on with greater levels of value creation is useful and helpful. Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. I think with real world insults, I'm a massive golf fan, I have to confess personally, so I think it would be remiss of me not to cover off possibly the best real world application of GreenLake that I've seen very recently. Obviously, for those on the call that aren't golf fans and have been living under a rock for probably the past 50 years, the Ryder Cup has obviously just recently been and gone. Europe fantastically retained it. But the key for me is that is a real world, almost smart city pop-up using HPE GreenLake over the space of weeks, and probably quite easily the most connected, most customer experience driven event and participation driven event, with all of the varying moving parts of both the actual physical infrastructure to manage it. I think off the top of my head, I think it's somewhere around 900 access points, which can all being controlled and accessed through HPE GreenLake. Now,
yes, indeed.
Could you kindly give us an idea of why GreenLake is the best solution for those guys and what it actually brought to the table? I'm conscious there may be people on the call that aren't aware of the level of engagement that HPE had around it. I do, because I was politely looking to attend and nearly there, and I'm obviously a massive golf fan. So if you could you give us a little bit of a flavour from that? Would you be?
Yeah, sure. So within that, particularly around location-based services, and you see other examples like 49ers Stadium and Spurs Stadium in the UK, as other examples of this. But the Ryder Cup, as you rightly point out, is something that comes along, is there, which is in Italy this year, and then is no longer. But by providing that capability, we were able to provide an underpinning for the Ryder Cup of all the necessary technology through from the physical devices, connectivity, and up into the location-based services that allowed us to understand where crowd movements were, where people were congregating, where they weren't congregating, and really understand that, so that gave the Ryder Cup organization the ability to provide the best on-site fan experience possible, and for them to be able to dial up and dial down capabilities as needed, the ebb and flow of the games across of the rounds across the course of the days and so on.
Yeah, just fantastic. I can't believe the scale and grandeur of the actual event though. I think it was 370 acres for the actual whole coverage area, including the sort of the wider area, and just the level of people that was on there. The footfall, I think, was probably close to 7 figures over the course of the tournament, which is obscene numbers when you think about it. And it was just easily, as you said, a pop-up smart city, and 2 weeks after it's gone. That was it, disappeared.
But these things, in terms of things like private 5G, and in terms of the location-based services and those capabilities through the stack, occur for more permanent situations, such as airports, for example, and other places where, to your point around large footfall, And these are replicable also in smaller footfall situations, such as retail environments and so on as well.
Very, very strong. And it's just that, like I said, the scale. I think the actual value it delivers is literally very, very broad. There isn't a customer base that I don't think some of those functionality sets and value would not be welcomed by customers or being desired by them already. So in relation to sort of moving along with the next, I'd sort of more around a roadmap for navigating hybrid cloud. I think that'd be a nice place to sort of just kick on forwards. So the obvious question is, when should customers be migrating to hybrid cloud? We obviously saw a statistic at the front of it saying that 82% of companies are either in their hybrid cloud strategy or planning to do it. But I'm keen to get your views on when you think customers should be migrating.
So I was at a dinner with some customers recently, and I said, look, cloud to me is not AWS or Azure. It's cloud as a set of capabilities, and it's down to the customer to decide where they want those capabilities deployed. So it's not so much that people should migrate towards hybrid cloud as it's something that is there today for customers to be able to do, and that it starts becoming, actually, I don't have to make hard choices. I get to make choices around this business application, this thing that I want to do for this period of time. We're seeing a greater level of ephemeral applications. We're going to be in this thing, like the Ryder Cup, but it's going to be time bounded. We're going to be at Formula One, and we're going to be here in Brazil for 3 days, and we need a thing, and we're going to break it down and we're going to ship it. I know these are both sports examples, but we can continue on those. So it's more that the vendors are now catching up with the latent customer demand. And before, when people said, I want to be out of the data center business, well, the answer was to go to typically the public cloud. But actually, there are other ways of doing that and giving people more options. And I think our move to this will be complete when people sell compute futures, much as they sell corn and hogs and other things, because it commoditizes it, and it frees customers to do what they want, where they want to do it, for however long they want to do it. And you'll see that fluidity coming in.
Fantastic. Very quickly, some of the questions, obviously some of the slides and the actual recording will be shared with those guys. Thanks very much for the quick questions. What I would ask is that there will be a sort of large question and answer session. I've sort of aligned Marcus's time so that we can answer those on the fly. So if you kindly save the questions and put them in the question box, we can answer those at the end of the session. Thanks very much indeed for that, Marcus. So picking up with that, so what are the core set of tools or hybrid cloud tools that you think will need to be sustained moving forwards as a sort of a next step on from what we've just spoke about?
So from an infrastructure and technology perspective, customers need tools that understand cloud. And by that, I mean, historically, so we might have some systems management technologies and they're measuring things that are on premises. Well, if you're running infrastructure as code, all of a sudden a server appears and your monitoring system picks it up and then it disappears and it reports a fault because well, that's not the case. So technologies that understand the ephemeral nature of cloud environments are things that are key and crucial. And there are some very good vendors out there in that particular space, people like Morpheus, for example, that understand that provisioning. But also systems management, monitoring, availability technologies that understand the ephemerality, particularly if it's like infrastructure as code. So those are the kinds of things that people are going to look for, and whether their current vendors are keeping pace, particularly in the software space, or whether they need to look at a fresh set of vendors, or a slice of those, to provide that functionality that understands that different notion of what a cloud operation is, and also the ability to burst and to move seamlessly or as seamlessly as possible between on-premises and cloud functions so that things can pick up the slack as is appropriate.
100%. That's I can fully appreciate the automation and orchestration element. It needs to be there because the fully aware that's definitely something that's needed. So What is your opinion in relation on the rising trend of migrating workloads back onto premise? Well, obviously, the hybrid cloud, we've talked about cloud first strategies and customers going the opposite way. We've obviously seen a trend where, unfortunately, they've decided actually the cloud first strategy is probably a little bit too early. We need to come back. I'm interested to see what your thoughts are. That is it. You thought it was naturally going to happen? Has it taken a little bit longer than you thought it was going to take, or actually is it happening as you envisaged it potentially was going to?
So I'm going to stick my neck out very slightly here and say that while you'd expect someone who works for a technology company like ours to say, oh yeah, it's buyer's remorse, etc. But I wonder whether we're not just seeing more fluidity of applications. And people saying, you know what, and it's always dangerous. We look, for panaceas in this industry, and cloud isn't a panacea, and it was never intended to be one. And it required some fundamental changes in the way that people operated, and I think they did the learning of that as they found themselves in that space. So it's not that they got it wrong. It's, hey, we didn't know we were going to be there until we got there, and then we went, how did we get here? So I tend to look at it as more customers going, hey, I don't have to make a final decision on these things. I don't have to say this is actually what I want is flexibility for my users and for my customers. And that could be in different places depending on what I want to do and when I want to do it.
And that leads in is obviously hybrid cloud is absolutely the way forward for them to able and to automate how they could do that. And in the same process with GreenLake and sort of the orchestration and the overarching capabilities of the platform and the dashboard, that would allow them to. It's allowing them to have a single. I appreciate the cliche of a single pane of glass, but it's still fundamentally, it's the best way for me to explain why GreenLake and hybrid cloud would allow them to do all of that in a single pane.
Well, yeah, if I'm a manufacturer, if you're a manufacturer, you want cloud capability. You want to be able to deploy cloud type capabilities into those manufacturing plants. But you need decisions made in sub-second time. You haven't got time to send it back to a data center, public, private, whatever it might be. But you still want those cloud capabilities. You still want to be able to deploy cloud type applications, etc., out there. You want those decisions made, but you still want to be able to look at some of that stuff in context and bring it back into a more central location to say, I want to digest the information that I'm seeing around my manufacturing sites, around my plants around the world, and be able to do a compare and contrast and see how we're functioning, better or worse in various places. So they all have their place within that.
100%. And I think literally with some of the trends I'm seeing myself is it's no longer local organizations, it is global organizations, and they are looking for that global point of view to be able to say if certain parts are getting better out of what they're doing, how are they working, sharing that intelligence, sharing that expertise, and the technology is easily allowing them to do so, which is one of the key values for this taking out of it. So I think it's probably a good time to sort of look at the sort of current trends, sort of move that along, and what best practices do you advocate customers to utilize? It's probably maybe a good place to start.
So probably not a great revelation here, but start with what is your business outcome? And then track back and be agnostic about what the things are to deliver. When I was in EA and I would go to my development team and I'd say, I've got a problem. And they'd say, great. The answer is AWS. It's $250,000 to get started. I'm like, no, hang on a second. No, don't predetermine that it's, and I'm not bashing AWS, brilliant. But hear me out before you determine what the target platform is. Let's figure this. So that's the first thing is that, and it becomes around what is our outcome and what process do we need to follow to get to that, and therefore our locations and our technologies will start to fall into place naturally to fit that.
No, and I think that mirrors exactly with Ultimo. It's always been an assessment-led organisation, and it's always been about understanding the business outcomes and the desired end state, and then working back and seeing which of the technologies within our portfolio, which is obviously a number of key vendors, including HPE in this space.
Yes.
Definitely an area we need to be going into. So
definitely. Yeah.
How does HPE aim to harness the emerging AI and ML technologies to improve solutions around in the hybrid cloud? I know that's a broad topic. I know we sort of broached AI and ML very briefly because I think it's a locomotive train that is already going into the station, and I don't think we're going to be able to stop it. I think it's a matter of us trying to build the right tracks and control systems around it to make sure that it benefits everybody. But I'm keen to understand what your view around that is.
So a colleague of mine has this phrase, he says AI is boring. And what he means is it's already here. It's not a new thing. And at HPE, we've been using AI ourselves within things like InfoSight to better serve our customers and to understand our technology. So that's that very first part. And within GreenLake, that permeates through that of, how are the systems performing, what patterns, trends are we seeing, etc. And really building on that and out to a global scale. So that's the first part. And then the second part is above that line in terms of for customers themselves, we have built out an AI capability to support data engineers, data scientists, and so on, that allows them to take their Jupyter notebooks, build out their models, and then have infrastructures, because they can be quite brittle, that support them and support changing needs and allow them to bring in data pipelines, supporting hyperparameter optimization and various other things like that, so that they can do these things, because AI and data science is a different beast to traditional IT. Data scientists come along and say, I need the following, and the data center people go, really? What is this stuff? And there is that. So, but if we can support the data centers by saying, here are reference architectures through the stack up to that notebook level that can assist your engineers and provide them with that solidity, that's one aspect. And then below the line, forgive me for mentioning, but with GreenLake, we're actively eating our own dog food, as the Americans would say, in terms of that's how we do things ourselves as well.
Yeah, you've got to practice what you preach. I don't disagree.
Yeah.
It's definitely something that we would advocate ourselves. Something that's obviously I see is that the landscape of applications across the customer cloud. So what we're trying to work out is how can we assist our customers into integrating that landscape into something probably more manageable. At the moment, it's as broad as it is long. We've obviously spoken at length about the parameters and the applications for AI are as broad as people want to think it is. It's broad. So how would you suggest that we integrate that landscape? Sort of how do we assist our customers?
So that's a difficult one to answer on the basis that AI is, to use your earlier analogy, a bit of a runaway train, right? And a brilliant example I was given recently by someone was, when you go and ask a ChatGPT or something, or your own large language model a question, there isn't a segregation right now. So if HR start asking questions, putting information in to better serve the HR department, marketing or whomever else can come along and ask questions that may end up revealing some of that information. So we don't have in these LLMs, it's once you're in, you can ask anything.
Yeah, it's immersive.
So we don't have a way of segmenting or partitioning some of these things. And I think that is one of the things that needs most looking at, is to whom do we make these AI systems available, and how do we make them available, and what do we and don't we put into them, etc. We're already seeing that the stories of people, asking questions and then not realizing that when you put this stuff in, or someone saying, well, I built my website this way, and it's like, well, all your code has now been absorbed by this, kind of like the Borg, it just kind of takes it all in and keeps it.
Yeah.
If you're a lawyer and you're using this to evaluate contracts, then those contracts might be subsumed into this and might actually reveal things that your customers' competitors could benefit from, etc. So I think the first thing there is around security and putting parameters and borders and etc. around what you do with these things, that we should be that the AI has, with great power comes great responsibility. And the AI seems to have the great power, and we need to have that great responsibility about how we use that.
Agreed. I think it's pretty good timing. So obviously, I've seen Antonio Neri has obviously been at the White House with a number of technical leaders in the States talking about the executive summary for AI and speaking to the sort of the administration. And you would think those conversations are already well underway here with our own government, and it'd be interesting to understand how the new laws that are pending will come out, will sort of put some guidance and a little bit more of a roadmap for customers and for ourselves to assist.
You make a very good point, Gary, but the law is always playing catch up in all of these things.
Yes.
And so it behoves us to, now we've got some early examples like the hiring examples, various other ones, to take a step back and back to that thing about processes. So what are we going to do here? You know, this thing can come back and bite us. So what do we want to do?
So is by that sense a zero trust a prerequisite for hybrid cloud?
I would say zero trust is a prerequisite for everything.
Yes. Yes.
And I'm by no means being, and I say that because, you know, the accepted thing within cybersecurity is not if, it's when, and it's how do you limit the blast radius.
Yes.
So yeah, it should occupy, you know, our thinking, and DevOps is now DevSecOps.
Yes.
And, you know, security used to be a thing we built the app, now we're going to put some security around it, which is generally like a login environment. Now it should be, no, let's start off with how this thing could get abused and broken, and let's start from that principle of how we provide attribute-based access control, zero trust, you know, minimal rights to do anything, and for a, you know, time-bound period, etc. Minimal promotion of people's privileges, and for recordable reasons, logged reasons, etc. And then shut it back down again.
It's literally going down to the I'm probably oversimplifying it very massively, and apologies for anybody that's on the call that thinks that is the sort of the blurred between sort of the security, the network and connections, and the actual what we would classify as old traditional infrastructure with public cloud integration. Suddenly those distinct areas that used to be sort of fairly well siloed off, probably kept quite separate, are now the sort of in this complete data repository and in this immersive environment that customers are having to manage themselves, because it's just
absolutely
growing in complexity and size and astonishing rates. I think it's scary rates.
And it's even worse than that. If you're looking at Industry 4.0, by its very definition, you're punching a hole in the side of what the manufacturers call the Purdue model, which is the segregation exactly as you described. And so you're allowing something that might come in through the IT organization into the factories, into the production sites, into pumping stations and generators and all sorts of public utilities, critical national infrastructure, etc. But as we as customers demand ever greater ability to take one of these or whatever it might be to do our thing, we increase the attack surface exponentially by saying, well, I might be on my phone, but I might be on my tablet, and I might be here, but I might be there, and I'm etc. So we want that greater freedom and flexibility, but that only makes that attack surface bigger. So yeah, back to that thing, zero trust all the time, everything.
There was always the nirvana of having your data everywhere on the device of choice, and it's just that's the involvement of that. And like you said, it's a far bigger data attack surface. I scare myself sometimes with polymorphic attacks and what we're talking around with security and what's coming around the lines. So it's a fundamental part of anything that we're talking around with hybrid cloud. But yeah, I think one of the other trends that sort of coming across is sort of containerization and sort of seeing a lot more of engagement around that. So do you think that adoption within customers is now growing outside the DevOps team from a containerization point of view? And is containerization in the cloud here to stay to assist in that delivery of cloud native microservice architectures?
So yes, I mean, if you look at vast data,
yes,
as a perfect example, there, instead of it being I've got a pair of controllers, and if one dies, I flick over to the other, or it's a problem. So that's built on that kind of containerization architecture. So if part of that dies, another one comes back up. So it becomes very, very resilient. Let's go back to the Ryder Cup, right? I've got containers. and I've got people trying to book, or Glastonbury, whatever it might be, and I've got this huge spike, I can fire these up far more efficiently and quickly than I can spin up VMs, and I can just kill them all off, right? I can do my blue-green type production. I can do all of these kinds of things. But I don't think that containers replace VMs. I think people have spent a long time building virtualization architectures.
Yes.
And actually, rather than throwing that away and starting again, what they're doing is putting the containerization on top of that. And I think that's a happy marriage there. And I think that we look for ever increasing levels of speed and response as consumers from the people from whom we buy. And that necessitates them having very, very fast turnarounds in terms of DevOps. And therefore, containers give them that ability, gives them that, you know what, that one died, so we'll just kill it. It's not like I've got to feed and water this thing, so I can separate that out. So yeah, very much so.
I agree. I think literally it's more the IT team doesn't have to worry about that. It's something that's done within the parameters they can control, but they don't need to physically do it. They can serve it up to the various lines of business that require the ability to literally do things far quicker than they typically would normally do within the IT teams, just because of a workload, of a resource, of a literally being pulled from pillar to post, which is the usual for those guys in those environments. So thank you. I think I was on those lines, but it's nice to hear someone from it yourself agreeing that that marriage is definitely something that's not changing. If anything, it's just evolved.
Yes.
And that the containerization is definitely sort of an overlay and an icing on a cake that is already generated and nice and safe.
Yes. Yes.
Fantastic. So I think with that in mind, it's probably a good time to look at the future of hybrid cloud.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, what do you think the customers are going to seek in their future hybrid cloud architecture?
I think the first thing.
Broad question, I appreciate.
And having sat on that side of the fence, it's like, make this seamless for me. Right?
Yeah.
Make it so that things happen where they need to happen. Don't provide me with barriers, ingress, egress. One of those doesn't work over there, etc. I want an agnostic landscape, if that makes sense. And, I've got budget cuts, I've got fewer people, I've got more demand from the business. I don't want to be spending time thinking about this.
And leading that on is, so how will vendors in the space like HPE evolve to address these?
So we've taken that approach, and I think we have done our very best to live within and evolve our capabilities to be within an ecosphere, so that when people are talking to us about GreenLake, they're not talking to us about an island, but our ability to integrate with AWS and Google and Azure, and coexist, and to support and create that right the way through that architectural stack, the ability to burst into various parts, and that the ability to report on overall cloud spend, so whether that's public, private, combination, etc., to see cloud in its context of cloud through our hardware and software capabilities, rather than saying, well, that's our bit because we're reluctant because we don't really want you to go else. It's not like that. So.
Yeah, it's adjusting customers, making sure they don't feel they're locked in. It's more literally that they're coming to you and approaching you as part of that natural order. As a cliched as it is, it's the trusted advisor. It's the people that are looking to seek the challenges before they become challenges, and how are you working with us to address those? So, how does HPE remain relevant in the hybrid cloud world? Most can see the private cloud, but where's the relevancy potentially around the public cloud and the integration with yourselves and GreenLake?
So I think that there will always be an on-premises, it could be in a customer's data center, could be in a colo provision, etc. And we remain relevant partly because we work with the colos, so that if a customer says, look, can you just take this whole problem away rather than can you just do the GreenLake bit? Can you do the bit beneath that? Can you sort that out for me, and work with my partners like Ultima to make that happen? The answer is yes. So customers will invariably have a need for a greater on-premises to a greater lesser extent. but what they have a need for is a cloud capability. And so we remain relevant by saying we play a part in that. This is the part we play, but also this is how we connect into your ecosystem so that you're not dealing with islands, so that this is an interconnected ecosystem, to use that word again. And that's how we, that's how we stay relevant, is by being very aware that actually it's not about our hardware being 5% faster than somebody else's this particular quarter or whatever it might be, which was the case 20 years ago, but actually this is how we fit in and connect. And a lot of that you're seeing happening much more at the software level, the infrastructure, architecture, technology level, at least as much as at the physical level.
I totally agree. I think is the ecosystem. I like the analogy of it because it's always evolving. It's always organically, literally addressing, and sometimes it's addressing the challenges without realizing that it's addressing them, and it's recognizing them, it's understanding them. So I think I'm conscious of time. So with regards to what would you think of the emerging technologies moving forwards as we go look into sort of 2024 and possibly 2025 and beyond? What are the key emerging bits that you see growing, having seen visibility from your side?
So I'm not going to say the obvious because we know what those are, but the thing that is coming up, we talked about the metaverse and everyone thinks about Facebook and people with headsets on bumping into each other and so on, but the digital twin aspect of that, the industrial metaverse with augmented and extended realities, the ability to do that, I see significantly growing. I'm part of the World Economic Forum's advanced manufacturing task force in this particular space, and we are very much committed to that as a development area, and we're seeing that. And when you see things like the digital twin of BMW's car factories and so on, so you can design like that, but also you can take the outputs, not only design at 3D, but you can take the outputs of that and feed that back into your designs and understand. That's one big area where I see, and you can do that around passenger flow or spectator flow, consumers, whether they're walking around the Ryder Cup or airports or retail, and all these sorts of things, so that we can not just model better environments, more capable environments, but actually get the metrication from those environments that feeds in to that and helps us understand, well, that was the idea, how did it work out? So how do we go into an iterative process? That's the first part. The second part is how do we square the circle of, if I want all this AI stuff and this metaverse and all this, which is hugely costly in terms of power consumption, how do I balance that against the fact that I need to bring, we as a world need to bring our power consumption down? So these two things are pulling against each other. And so when you start to think about things like photonics, so why do we use carbon? Why do we use copper, which just puts out a lot of heat, all that heat loss and so on? Things like photonics. Can we increase our use of those and therefore cut down energy inefficiencies? Can we create memory fabrics so that we are computing in place? Because every time we move a piece of data right the way through the stack from the SAN up into CPU and back down again, we're paying a tax on that. That's inefficient. So if we can look at memory fabrics and do things in place, then that increases in efficiency as well. And the final one, I suppose, is anyone going to be really brave and come out with, rather than putting a sticking plaster over the von Neumann architecture at CPU level, is anyone going to come out with a new architecture? That's not for us. That's more maybe an Intel AMD kind of question. But there are inherent inefficiencies in terms of this 70-year-old model that we've patched and patched and patched, and Moore's law is kind of coming to an end. So how do we improve those efficiencies in that space as well? So those two sectors, I see.
Massively important. I'm very, very interested in all of those. I'm myself more than a technology geek, so the metaverse is obviously something I've already seen and evaluated. I think some of the customers we're seeing are using it for aspects that we didn't initially think of, things like training. You mentioned about the digital twins. We have a lot of healthcare and a lot of training for surgeons being able to do that remotely, do that virtually. It's just accessing different things to utilize it. I'm seeing it more in sort of engineering, where you've got sort of potential people and starters learning on engines where there's not the ability to go and physically do it anymore, but you can do it virtually and enter at a level that is far more superior than where you were before, and it's literally up to yourself to go and do things. The photonics is definitely something that I'm going to be sort of researching a little bit more in detail. I do think literally it's simple things like that. It's those minute gains that are going to emerge and then become the norm. I look and I cast my memory back to sort of storage and media with that, with the way that spinning disk has evolved all the way forward to SSD and flash, and I don't think I'm broad or bold to say that it's a flash environment for everybody now, just because of the parity in costs and so forth. So it's that evolution. Memory fabrics, very, very interesting. I think the concept is fantastic. I think literally is the next evolution. Quantum computing along those lines is just becoming that more, dare we say the AI word. It's more around that sort of machine learning and evolution and intelligence, and for assistance with ourselves. I think that's probably covered off most of the questions I wanted to cover off, Marcus, and I'm very, very thankful for your time. I'm looking at the questions and we seem to be a bit bare, so I'm not sure if people have been using the question box or if we have attendees that have any questions they'd like to unlock the floor to and to ask. I'm understanding from some secret colleagues that are on the call that everybody can hear us. I'm just not seeing anybody asking any questions. Is there anything that anybody would like to ask Marcus or myself on the back of some of the topics and some of the areas that we've covered off in our conversation today? It's a stunned silence. I'm not sure if that's down to my technical knowledge of the platform or if there's no questions from anybody, which I'm quite surprised with, given the topics we've been talking about and who we've been talking to.
But we're always here if you want to email afterwards or whatever, so it's absolutely fine.
I think it may be that, yes. I think that I can't see any questions at the moment, Marcus, which I'm a bit flabbergasted with, I have to confess, but we'll make sure that we follow up with those that have attended. If there are any immediate pressing questions, then I will facilitate them to yourself. But let me thank you again for your time. Very, very enjoyable time talking to yourself. And hopefully the audience has had some of their questions answered, possibly understood a little bit more about hybrid cloud and the reasons why it is so prevalent and why it is one of those key priorities for businesses moving forwards. Hopefully we've shed some light on that. Thanks again for everybody for taking the time to join. Thanks again. Hopefully we will speak again in the following on series. And thanks again for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. Thank you.